Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, an inspired conversation space between Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner on the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness.
We keep our conversations honest, our experiences real, and our philosophies exploratory. We believe that in order to raise incredible humans, we first have to raise ourselves. We know that in order to rock the family, you've got to nourish the mother. If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively, head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper. And for all live streamed pre-release podcasts and all our free content, head over to our free Facebook group, Nourishing the Mother with Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is holding versus holding on in motherhood. And it comes from a listener's post. Is that right, Bridget, in Reimagining Motherhood?
Yeah, so it was in Reimagining Motherhood and I read it and I made a quick response in the group, but I thought, yes, this is definitely something we need to delve into in the podcast, because while this was one woman saying this, there was echoes of it in the comments, and I know from all the podcasts we've done over the years that this is definitely themes that come up. So we are going to dig into different aspects that we felt stand out in this I guess call for help and reflection and insight. And we hope that in pulling that apart and delving into it in the way we intend to, that you also, dear listener, see yourself in this and perhaps walk away with some new understanding and tools.
So what we would like to say is Bridget's about to read out this post and we're going to answer it over 2 podcasts. So this will be part 1 and then there'll be a following part 2 response in next week's podcast.
Yes, so here we go. The house is quiet. After holding everyone for what feels like an eternity, I am finally alone. The weight of motherhood right now is hard. Enough that it's manifesting with bodily symptoms of tight neck, back, and shoulders. But I'm sure demand breastfeeding isn't helping either. But here's my problem. The repeated pattern of not or feeling like I am unable to ask for help. We've had conversations before, and I know all my signs of overwhelm, of martyrdom, of putting everyone else first and trying to control everyone and everything around me as to not tend to myself, my needs, etc., but then resenting everyone around me. So I know this pattern. So why? Why, oh, why is it so fucking hard to ask for help? What am I not seeing? What leaves me feeling like he should see what is going on? For him to take equal responsibility for the emotional and mental well-being of parenting and family responsibility. Is it wounded and underempowered feminine? Shooting all over the place with what I should be able to do? Clearly, this pattern is repeating and repeating, and I'm staying here in the pain of it all. So I haven't learned my lesson yet, and honestly thought by now I would have. Clearly, I like this soundtrack. I'm about to go and journal this too and set up another conversation for us to have tonight. But please, can you help me out?
I mean, I just open-heartedly love this woman already, because how you can feel openness in communication, can't you?
Yeah.
Like even in the written word, there's a certain transcendence that appears with it because of the intention and energy with which it was created. We feel it potentially days, weeks later from the resonance that's available in those words. So I just want to first bring everybody's attention to that, because the energy with which you do something has a lasting effect and can be felt even in the written word. It's not about having the perfectly put together text message. It's about the way and the emotions with which you created it, will be what is received.
Mm.
So I'm just going to pin that here, and we'll see if we come back to it. Might be more in next week's podcast. If you are willing, Bridgie, where I would like to start is when I read this, the very first thing that jumped out to me about this is, oh man, this is one of the things that I feel like gets really twisted up, particularly in the conscious field parenting, where we're working so freaking hard to hold space, to hold emotions, to be the rock for our children, to get all of the shit done, to maintain the house, the emotional equilibration, the children's milestones, all of the things, right? It's like we might call it the mental load of motherhood. But above and beyond that is if you have a value on parenting in a way that creates relationship and connection, builds emotional intelligence and body autonomy within your children, then there is an added and additional layer to that, right? Like we all feel that burden sometimes.
Yeah, because in doing that, you're not rushing through a nappy change, you're not forcing clothes on a child. Like there's a different resourcing often that's required that can feel taxing.
Totally. Yeah, well said. And what I see shift here is this concept of what we call holding space. So holding everything our children have in every moment of the day versus this thing of, well, I will do this thing because that's what I need to do. That's what I've signed up to do in a way. That's what I've said I will do. This is what matches my identity. But inside, I'm like, this tight little bean that can't actually even find a breath. There's so much tension, but I'm still listening.
Yes, yes.
So holding space versus holding on and looking like the actions of holding are two incredibly different experiences. So I just briefly wrote down a list of 1v1, and would you be open to me just reading those out so we can identify where we sit here?
Yeah.
All right. So holding is the experience of being free of tension. Holding on is the experience of you're full of tension. Holding has an open heart, an available heart for connection. Holding on has a closed heart and an unavailability for intimacy of any type. Holding, you can feel yourself even while you are feeling someone else's experience. You still got a foot in your camp. You still know where you're at, how you be, where your willingness is, how you are, what is going on for you. You can still feel yourself. You are still connected to your truest self. Holding on, you can't connect with anyone, including yourself. And in fact, you'll likely be avoiding yourself and connecting with yourself and feeling yourself. And often we can use parenting and the this disaster and the this moment and the this blah, blah, blah as a way of being so busy, we don't have time to feel ourselves. But we also don't have to own that.
Oh, I bloody love it because yes, holding on has this, it's almost like you're hurtling through time and you are so on the clock that everything has to go just the way you need it to for everybody to be okay, which means it leaves very little room for feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. Which actually, quite wonderfully, leads into one of the last points I wrote down here, which is holding feels like flow. Holding on seeks ever-scaling levels of control. Holding feels like inspiration. You can still feel inspired while you're holding space. Versus holding on where all there is overwhelm and burden. So if I put it to our beautiful listeners in those two columns, I wonder if you can feel into the difference between holding space and holding on. Because they're incredibly different experiences. And you're not holding space if you're holding on.
I would also say too, holding space doesn't have an agenda, and holding on has an agenda.
Good one. I'm going to write it down.
Because in fact, even today, because I did a post about, like, I got super angry this morning, and I can see examples through my day of holding and holding on, like the two differences. And holding is deeply present. You can feel yourself in them. Because they can feel you, they're more willing to be moved by you. Whereas holding on is disconnected. It's frustrated.
Yep.
We don't want to be often around our children because of the frustration. Like we both feel responsible and resentful at the same time.
Yeah.
And I love that distinction between the two, because I think all of us can see that, like, you know, where we can really resource ourselves to hold, and to be in a holding kind of energy, and where for every which reason we move into holding on.
Yeah. So when I read this beautiful woman's, I'll call it a letter, I just my heart just kind of had that yearning feeling of like, oh my love. I remember the me that felt like, this was the way to be a conscious parent. I'm not saying that's necessarily what this person's doing, but I can remember the me that was like, this is what you got to do, and you got to do it all of the time and without fail and always to perfection, and it has to look like this, which is so vastly, vastly different to how I be now, and so much easier now. And the only difference is I understood this. It's not a set of actions that make you hold space. That make you good at holding space, that make you good at being available for, this is terrible wording, but able to really be impactful in your child's experience. It's not about the actions. It's about how you're feeling internally. So what that calls us into is more radical self-centered care.
Yeah.
Because as your holding increases, and it does, no different to responsibility as an adult, right? As responsibility raises, same as our holding capacity raises, we have to equally do better at raising our self-care alongside it.
Yeah, that absolutely doesn't, like, it's actually, I can't even get the words out, but it's the last thing that we should be willing to let go of, right? Like, versus it being, in our culture, this thing that you maybe might make room for if you have time.
Yeah.
Because if you're holding on so much, you don't have room for that, right?
Yes.
Versus that being front and center, because how much you give energy to that practice for yourself is therefore directly mirrored by how much holding you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And also not even just maintaining the self-care practices that we had, but actually recognizing that as we develop and grow, and what we're required to hold develops, grows, and deepens, so do our practices need to. The thing that filled me up 20 years ago is not going to be the shit that helps me fill up now. So there has to be this concept as one grows, so too must the other, in order for you to feel like you're in an abundant state to choose where you direct your energy, rather than feeling like it's being directed for you, which is also what that sense of overwhelm is, right?
Yeah, because if you're overwhelmed, then it's like you're not running the show anymore.
Yeah, I don't have governance over my own life. There's this sense of under empowerment or disempowerment. And so that often then plays out into dynamics with our children, with power play dynamics and family dysfunctions and, or function in the dysfunction. So I'm just saying, what does it look like to recognize that you can't be a clean, clear, and emptied space holder for your children, which teaches them truly how to be with themselves. And as you said, to move through whatever it is they're in a really safe way. We know as humans whether we're safe or not on a nervous system level.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't matter how that person's prostrating or how the words that are coming out so beautifully articulated, they don't mean shit unless I can feel you.
Yeah. And I can feel safety with you.
Right. Exactly. So there has to be, and look, I will refer to this as well as being, this is also where the system that we live in, both culturally and medically, lets down mothers. Because there isn't a space that says you need to do these things. There are not support systems that allow you to, or show you a pathway to, or support you to, right? That's not part of our culture that says you need to do these things in order to be able to do these things.
Because parenting and mothering is so marginalized and undervalued.
Yeah, it's just like this thing you do.
Yeah, that you should know how to do.
This podcast is brought to you by what we have going on in the world right now that you can dive deeper, dip a toe into, or explore a little more. So over at julietenner.love, we have all things Lovers School happening. So Lovers School begins on April 18. It's a beautiful container just for the couples, so you can have a space to explore yourselves, your connection, your sexuality, your relationship, your communication, that you have content you can watch at your own pace. You have me available to you for 6 whole weeks, and you have 2 workshops that you can join in as much or as little as you like. There's no pressure. This is just a space for you to dedicate to you and your relationship. And Bridgie.
Yes, and over at bridgetwood.life, you can check out Flow, Mind, Body, Mothering, which is all things managing, uncovering, and expanding your energy in your parenting. It's all about seeing dynamics in your relationship with your child and your broader family. It's about tuning into who your child is and becoming, and about really equipping yourself as a mother with more tools to help you feel lush and expanded in your mothering journey.
So, in order to make this shift from a whole lot of, as you said, Bridget, resentfulness and this overwhelming sense of responsibility that is not equally shared, you have to have a clean slate to begin with internally. There has to be this reorienting towards your own well-being. And the times at which I can recognize I've, flipped into more holding on than holding is when I go, whoa, baby girl, you got to bring back your pillars of self-care, your pillars of well-being. What are they? Because you need those right now. They might be the last things that you want to do. But if you don't do them, you can't get back over there, and you are just, you're off center, you're off axis. So to get back, you have to do these things. So I would invite us all to consider, what are our pillars of well-being? And usually there's never going to be more than 5. I would say 3 is a good number.
Yeah.
What are your 3 pillars of well-being that when shit's getting rough, when you're filled up and you can't empty and you can't put any more in and it's getting rocky? What are the things that fully support you to do your best work in the world? What are they? Because they're not that complicated often. I can tell you mine are: eat lunch. Lunch for me will be the first thing that disappears when I start this, because I'm disconnected from my body. The more I don't feel myself, the more I don't want to feel myself, and the more I don't feel myself, and therefore the easier it is to disconnect from the neck down.
And realize you haven't eaten for 6 hours or something.
Right. All day. Yeah. Which sends me into a spiral of horrendousness and parenting and all sorts of, it's not good, but that is the first thing that will go, because I'm not even connected to my body.
Mm.
So that requires some structures to put it in, that I make myself at 12:30, you go and eat, you go to the fridge, that I've meal planned and made sure that in my meal planning, I haven't just meal planned kids' lunch boxes and breakfasts and dinners, that I've meal planned for my own nutritious lunches. So I'm not standing there going, oh God, what am I going to eat today? Oh, I don't know. I'll just grab the packet of 2-minute noodles. I'm standing there going, oh no, this is easy. It's already sorted. I've helped previous me helped future me out. Thank you very much. So for me, having lunch is a pillar of well-being that I will always reorient towards having nutritious lunches, because often as mums, you won't eat, or it'll be the scraps off your kid's toddler's plate or the floor. So for me, it's lunch, and for me, it's sleep. When I'm going through a period of transition like now, or a period of change or overwhelm, my sleep requirement goes up substantially. I can no longer string my body out for longer periods at night. So I can't continue getting up early and staying up late. I can't do those two things when I'm running on empty. So it has to be I put myself to bed.
Yeah, sleep's a massive one for me.
Yeah, right.
It's probably the biggest.
And it has to be, don't forget, I've said this many times on this podcast as the naturopath, don't forget 2 hours for every hour pre-midnight, it's worth 2 hours post-midnight in restoration. So I always say to myself, get to bed at 8:30 at night and I wake up a different woman. Might only be 2 extra hours, right, as opposed to 10:30 or 11:30 at night, whatever it is that I might choose to go to bed otherwise. That 2 hours that I give myself at that end of the night makes such an enormous difference. It's like I've had an extra 4 hours of sleep. I will bounce out of bed the next morning. But if I don't go to bed by 8:30, I've already done myself a disservice. So when in these phases, lunch, to bed at 8:30 for me, and I need to drink more water. If I hydrate myself well, my brain has more activity, more availability. My cognitive brain can enhance itself so I can be more present, so I can see wider, so I can think better, so I can ask the better questions, so I can navigate myself and my choices and my day and my children the best way that I can. 2% of dehydration has enormous impacts on your brain function. Drink more water. And I would say to you, power pack your water. I never just drink water. I'm mad, have mad on great water, but then add some stuff into it. Add some vitamin C, add some bioflavonoids, add some whatever you want to add into your water. You might as well power pack it if you're drinking it anyway.
Magnesium, since we're talking about sleep as well.
Yeah. Totes magnesium. Yeah. Collagen, if that feels really good for you. So for me, sleep, water, lunch, I will be a different human in 5 days. What is it for you, Bridget?
Yeah, I would say those things probably sleep first for me. Is if that starts to slip, that's the first thing. And to the point where if I know I'm really struggling because my toddler still naps, I will nap when she naps. So you know how we say sleep when your baby sleeps? Sometimes I'll sleep when my toddler sleeps just because I know how restorative sleep is for me. And I do it without guilt. I've really come to the place where I can set aside what I think I should do in that time and front load my care, knowing that everything else that I need to service will be done better if I've got sleep right.
So does it change how you're going to bed or getting up or anything like that?
When I nap?
No, just when you're going, I need more sleep. As a pillar of well-being.
Oh, yes. So that changes. I just go to bed much earlier. Yeah. So it definitely pre-10, usually 9, if I know that I'm really struggling. And because my night's still dictated a lot by a toddler, I just know I have to get to bed a lot earlier than what I might usually cope with, which would be 11 or after, typically. So, going to bed 2 hours earlier, at least, when I'm really struggling. The other one, definitely water. Also, I find really making ritual out of preparing for bed. when I'm struggling. So that'll be having like medicinal mushrooms before bed, like reishi or something like that, so that it actually feels like I'm doing something really supportive to kind of wind down in a really conscious way. I would also add definitely getting into my body. So for me, the thing that can go can be pleasure. I can forget that. And so then it's like, okay, how can I consciously reorient back into my body? How can I prioritize time with my husband? How can I do the very thing that feels like I don't have time for? Because it's actually, it's like that, you know, that old saying about, you know, meditate for an hour a day, but if you don't have time, then meditate for 2 hours. Like, it's a little bit like, you know, pack pleasure into your week, but if you think you don't have time, pack more in. So I would definitely prioritize that. And yeah, food and water. And making sure that I'm having fun, right? Like putting on the music to dance to, finding like the flexibility in my rigidity, bringing more play in, like anything that shakes me out of what feels like a funk. And so like movement and music and dancing are like really powerful things that I find are really great to bring into my body and home, and therefore then flows out beautifully with the kids.
So good. So what I would love everybody to contemplate who's listening is, what are your key pillars of well-being? And as you've just heard, there will not be more than 3 to 5. My next one for you would be, how can you make these as simple as you can? Like, what is the simplest version of this? So me going, I want to have a really nutritious lunch. What is the simplest version of that I could possibly do for myself?
I love that you've highlighted simple, because in fact, when we're at this point, even making any decision can feel too hard.
Right, exactly.
Or exhausting.
And this is why I'm saying enough of the BS stories that say, I can't, I don't have time, it's not possible, no one can help me. Blah. Just like blah, vomit those out, and instead say, I can, I get to have these things. How can I, instead of I can't? And what is the simplest way that I could do this? Because you might even go, oh God, I would love that. And I'm going to, you know, cook grilled salmon with a crispy da-da-da-da and a blah, blah, blah. I don't even know. Hang on a minute, babes. Yeah, that's amazing. Great. And probably tomorrow you won't meet that benchmark, and then you'll curse yourself for falling off that wagon that you set. And then you'll be like, well, done it all to heck. Now it's like all in a, you know, it's all done. That's it.
It's too hard. I can't.
Yeah.
So in other words, make it sustainable. So like it has to be
is sustainable,
accessible.
Simple is sustainable. So how simple can you make those pillars that you have for your everyday? How simple can you make it? Then the last point that we're going to leave you with here, as you consider the difference between holding and holding on, is the degree to which you are holding space needs to also equal the degree to which you can let go. Now, that doesn't mean tit for tat, I've spent, 13 hours holding space, so I need to have 13 hours of letting go, Julie. I do not have 26 hours in my day. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is how it energetically feels for you, that those scales feel balanced in your internal world. Because I could spend 3 hours holding space. So I could hold space for clients for 3 hours. I could hold space for my children for 3 hours. It doesn't matter. It's the same skill. And then go, wow, that was a lot of holding space. There's a lot of stories in my body. There's a lot that my body's processing. What can I do right now to really let myself remember I'm a river and clean it out, clear it out, let myself flow again, and then feel myself and say, what do I need? Now that process could take me 5 minutes. So it's not that I just spent 3 hours doing that. I need 3 hours not doing that. It's, I just spent 3 hours doing that. How can I really develop a practice that lets me really let go in the deepest way that I can to clear all of that out? And you can clear 3 hours in 5 minutes, you better believe it. And then go, now what do I need? Now what do I want?
Love that.
Not in reaction to the other people's stuff that's cycling through my body. Clear it out, then go, what do I need? So just remember the degree to which you're holding, you've got to be able to let go. So I also love the idea of surveying our life and going, okay, yep, well, I actually really love being in control and leading, guiding, making the directions, blah, blah, blah. My skill set matches this. My purpose matches this, which for you and I, Bridgie, would be you and I both love parenting. You know, we might, you know, sometimes it might feel good that we're like, we would love our partners to take over, but also there's an edge of like, oh, it's a little hard sometimes to do because we do it better. Right, on some level.
Yeah.
So we don't choose to outsource that because it's meaningful and it still carries inspiration and purpose for us. We have the skill set. It's intertwined with our soul's mission. So it is meaningful and purposeful for us to be the ones who are leading, guiding, controlling, if you like, that area of life. I'm also a mofo at the kitchen and organizing meals. So thanks very much. I'll hold on to that because I can do it 5 times as fast as my husband and it's 1,000 times better. I'm going to hold on to that. Thanks very much. Basketball, I'm like, I'm sorry, what? What just happened? Where are we going? What's the Well, I'm not the person to be leading that.
Really, really happy to like not have that one. Yeah.
Honey, you go. It is aligned with your mission. It is deeply meaningful and inspiring to you. You can remember stuff. You can execute stuff like a mofo, like I can over here in meal making. He can in kids basketball. Great. Might sound nothing to you guys, but kids basketball in my life is every day. So it's like epic. So I'm like, awesome. You go do that. So survey your life. Where is it really deeply meaningful for you to be in control, to be leading, to be guiding? It's beautiful. And where is it not meaningful and inspiring? And where would you rather be led? Where would you rather explore your red hot mess and love that chaos, love that expression, love that, you know, freedom? Like, how do you balance your life in a deeply meaningful way? So, you know, I mean, Bridget, you and I have said this before, we couldn't hold what we hold with our kids and our businesses because it's really meaningful for us to do that if we didn't also have relationship and sex where we can find freedom and expression. They balance each other out.
Yeah, because where we have spaces to be able to be in chaos and, you know, to be taken somewhere and to not be in control is the perfect counterbalance to all of the opposite.
Right. So please, please, please spend some time just really sinking into the nuance of what it is to be truly holding, where it's healing and it's inspiring and there's energy that flows both ways. There's energy for you, there's energy for them. Versus holding on, there's no flow. There's no flow, there's no exchange. It is a tight,
it's just basically
up dam.
It's just running the gauntlet, right? It's just like, holding on, like gritting teeth.
Yeah. So please consider that it is entirely possible to parent with purpose, devotion, and consciousness, and that it can be free and fun and it doesn't have to look like hard fucking work.
And I would also say that if this feels overwhelming, that it might also be an invitation to look at what is in my life right now that if I really was honest with myself, I don't want it in my life right now. Because sometimes there can be this sense of I need to do all of the things and be all of the places and, you know, give my child everything. But in attempting to do that, if you feel like you're constantly holding on, then maybe it's a season to pull back a little. Because if your child's not really thriving in it, and you feel like you're just surviving, then is it something that's actually nourishing for you both or for you all as a family?
Totally.
But it will require of you sometimes to look at, gosh, what part of my identity is entangled in needing to do this thing or be that person or show up there in that space or be that way, and untangle perhaps that identity attachment to being that, so that you can be really true to where your values really want to go.
Yes. So how can we dive deeper with you, Bridget?
You can hop into Reimagining Motherhood, which is just a beautiful space for exploring all of these kinds of conversations and really beautiful coaching containers and group spaces and all of the beautiful things. So you can hop on and find out more about that at bridgetwood.life. And what's coming up for you, Jules?
Lovers School. So Lovers School is 6 weeks in a live facilitated container with me. That's an experience of just being with the person that you chose and having someone who can consciously just guide you through some moments of connection in your week, and 2 workshops to spend a couple of hours together, making your love and your sex even better than it is. You can find out more at julietenner.love.
And you can find out more from us at nourishingthemother.com.au. Remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
Thank you so much for listening. We literally couldn't do this without you. Please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively into your life, then head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper.
And if you feel like giving back a little to this free content, please rate us on iTunes or Facebook, all of which helps the podcast reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.